So, I guess we're just going to just talk generally about it today. As many of you have heard over the years, or if you don't know that, just in general, owning real estate is the number one wealth builder for people in the world, probably, but definitely here in America. I guess one of the main reasons why is because people just live in their homes and they're not manipulating it all the time. For people who are in the stock market, who are buying and selling stocks, you can get wealthy that way, but you have your hands on the assets all the time, and you can actually, it's not a good idea to keep going in and selling and buying whenever the market goes up and down. Whereas when people have their homes, they just kind of basically forget about the wealth building aspect of it, and they're just living in the house. So, 20, 30 years later, your house is generally worth a lot more than it was when you bought it 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So before you know it, you've accumulated wealth without really putting much thought into it, other than paying your mortgage every month. I guess one of the things that that we should try to focus on is how do you get to the point of owning a house, especially when you're young and you haven't accumulated a lot of things, especially wealth, but credit is one of the things that you're going to absolutely need if you're going to be able to qualify for a mortgage. And that's one of the things that unfortunately people don't focus on until it's like, maybe I want to buy a house, and then they go out and they find out that they don't have any credit, or their credit is very bad. One of the things that you want to start focusing on, or that we should be telling young people to focus on, and when I say young, I'm talking about people who are just getting out of school, just getting out of college, just in general, and maybe even high school too, because you can buy property at that age as well. Is knowing that you got to make sure you have good credit. So one of the ways to build credit is get a credit card and start buying some things that you would normally pay with cash, buy it with the credit card. And then at the end of the month, at the end of the cycle, you go in and you pay off that credit card. And then you'll start building up your credit score. So that's in general for us Black people. I assume most of us on this call are Black. We've been kept out of the real estate and the ownership market for since the existence of this country, and even before. So there exists today a big wealth gap, and I put a link in the chat already about where you can go in and read about that gap. There's a gap between whites and everybody else, and the gap is biggest between whites and Blacks, like a 20 to 25% gap in the rates of home ownership. Like 75% of whites own their own homes, whereas it's only 50% of Blacks, something like that.
So Lafayette, can I interrupt you real quick?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
After you finish your thought with the wealth gap, which is a very important one, if we could introduce the guys in Rich, that would be great.
Okay. Sure thing. And forgive me for just jumping right in. I was
no, it's all right. It's all right, man. I know you're excited, man. You're excited, man.
So that lack of home ownership in the Black community is a something that holds Americans back in general. So if more Black people can become homeowners, then that would lift the living standards of America in general. So that's one of the things I feel we should focus on. Okay, so you want to introduce everybody?
All right, so why don't we just start with well, first of all, welcome everybody. Thank you, Lafayette, for that valuable information. And we could just introduce guys. So Lafayette, why don't you start? Tell them your name and a little background about you as far as real estate.
Sure thing. My name is Lafayette Harris. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I've been living in New York since 1985. And I am a musician and had branched out into real estate starting in about 1996, 97. And since then, I bought a few houses in Brooklyn. I bought some buildings in the state of Pennsylvania, namely the city of Pittsburgh, and also bought some land from my mother in Virginia, and have a rental property on that land down there. So that's my general real estate experience.
All right, Reg Woods.
Yes, okay. My name is Reggie Woods. I'm a native New Yorker, born and raised South Side, Jamaica, Queens. Had the fortune of getting involved in real estate in the 90s when I purchased my first house, and then went on to purchase property in 3 states currently. I'm also a professional musician, and that's pretty much it.
Thanks, Reg. Native New Yorker. Okay. Other native New Yorker, James.
I'm from the real New York, from Harlem. But
oh boy.
If you can't be from Harlem, I guess Jamaica's all right. But yeah, so I'm unlike my associates here. I'm not a musician, although I did play the radio and the record player for a long time. I'm a CPA by day, involved in real estate, have properties in New Jersey, also have ownership in properties in Mississippi, believe it or not, and in Texas. And also deal with a lot of real estate issues for my clients, one of whom is probably calling now. But yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell in terms of my involvement with real estate, and in addition to my involvement with this group that we established, I guess it's been about a year now.
All right, thanks. My name is Reggie Pittman. I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, the one and only Cleveland. And I've been in real estate since about 1987. I do business in 3 states, Ohio, New York, and New Jersey. And my focus has always been pretty much one unit residential housing, so just single family. And so what we did is we all came together to collectively invest in properties. We call ourselves RICH, Real Estate Investment Corporation in Housing, and we develop communities. So this is some of the members. Just wanted to make sure that you know who we are. We have a website called richusa.net, and then we have an email. So you can check out everything from the website and go from there. All right, Lafayette, thanks, man.
For sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I've talked a little bit, and I just basically want to open it up. uh, to other members of the group, if you want to chime in on our discussion today is why you should own a home.
Well, I focused on Generation Z, right? So Generation Z are those that's under 30 years old as of now. And they're the first generation that are pretty much the digital generation. They all were born with cell phones and all of that stuff, which we accumulated, most of us, as far as the rich members in our adulthood. So with Generation Z, being young and buying a house, I came up with 10 reasons. And throughout this, I'll give you all 10, but I'm going to just start with one right now. There's a limited amount of land. Now, there are about 3 million square miles of the United States of land, right? So, and if there's 330 million people, that means that, if it's 3 million people, everybody get an acre. 30 million people, everybody gets a tenth of an acre. 300 million people, everybody gets 1/100th of an acre, relatively, right? I see James looking kind of, just stay on mute. All right, so that means, and we're not counting children. I'm just saying that, but we're just counting everybody. That means that there's a limited amount of land, so you can get your small amount of land if everybody owns it. Everybody's not going to own it, so you can get more than just that 1/100th of a square mile, because everybody's not really going to take advantage of the privilege, right? It's not a right, but the privilege of owning the land. So there's no more land being made, so you might as well get yours. And as you accumulate time, right, then as Lafayette said, then you're going to accumulate wealth. So I want to start with that. There's a limited amount of land, so you might as well own yours so you can do it. Anybody else as far as do it? I'll give you the other 9 as we go along.
I just want to piggyback on a couple of things that Lafayette had mentioned. Real estate real estate equity is probably the largest equity holding for people in the United States. So people who own homes usually are the ones who have a holding of equity. There are other ways to build equity, but for most people who are not professional investors and pretty much live a normal life, that is usually where most of their equity is held in their home. So that right there tells you you need to own a home if you want to have a base of equity. You got stockbrokers and all other types of investments that you can build equity in. But I think the easiest way to establish equity is to own a home and hold it for a period of time to build up some equity. Now, it's funny that, oftentimes people don't even realize the value of what their house is capable of doing in terms of equity. And Lafayette mentioned that, I've seen it in Brooklyn, where older people had purchased a building, 40, 50 years ago, and they may have paid $20,000 for a 4-story brownstone. And then someone knocks on their door and says they offer them $1 million for their building. They're like blown away. They don't even realize that they have that kind of equity in their property that they own. And that's a problem. It means that people really don't understand how building wealth and equity works. And oftentimes when you offer someone $1 million for a house that they paid $20,000 for, they're going to take it, not knowing that their property may be worth a whole lot more, but $1 million just sounds good, Who doesn't want $1 million? So It means we need to be educated about how to work our real estate, how to work the equity in our property. How you can refinance and pull out cash. You can pull out that cash and do other things, you know. But it's something that we need to learn about. Yeah, so I just wanted to throw those two things out real quick, and I'll let someone else talk now.
Mhm. And
Yeah,
I just wanted to say, oh yeah, go ahead, James.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on a couple of things that Lafayette mentioned earlier. You know, he talked about building your credit by using credit cards, and that's important. The most important thing he said actually was paying them off. So, you know, the idea is you should use credit cards instead of cash, not instead of money. You know, that's what a lot of people do is they put stuff on credit and don't pay it off. And then all of a sudden they found themselves, you know, buried in the mountain of credit card debt. And then, you know, wind up a lot of times having to get that written off, which negatively affects your credit. It's very important that you do that. Another way to help young people build credit is something which I did. I just learned this a few years back, is I put my son, who's now 24 years old, when he was in college, I put him as a co-signer on my car lease. So that helped to build his credit. And you know, when he went to buy a car at 22 years old, when he graduated from college, they looked at his credit score. They were kind of amazed. He had an over 800 credit score as a 24-year-old, because I also got him a credit card that he used and we paid off. And now, you know, at 24, he lives in Maryland. He's looking to buy his first home, looking to buy probably a townhouse or a condo, and he's already been pre-approved for a $350,000 mortgage loan. So, and to hop on what Reggie said, you know, about you know, there being a finite amount of land available. That's my grandmother used to say, that's the only thing God ain't making no more of is land. So
Yeah.
So go ahead, Love. I just wanted to get that in case I have to jump off because I have a meeting. Have a 10.
So James, just real quick, James, you mentioned something about credit, but if we're talking about young folks, they might not understand how credit works. So can you just, and excuse me, Laf, I'm just jumping in here, and then Antoinette asked a question, so we can get to that after that. So just can you just explain the basis of credit and how that works? So you know, so if anybody sees this later, then they'll have just a basic understanding of it.
I'm not sure if I fully understand the question, but I'll give it a shot.
So the difference of $500 credit score and a 800 credit score.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so your credit score, and basically there are 3 organizations that monitor credit. And I think that's my appointment. But basically, you know, that tells creditors what your ability to take on and repay debt. So the higher your credit score, the better. If you've got something, if you've got a $500 or $600 credit score, it's going to be hard for you to get credit. If you do, it will be at higher interest rates. And if you got a 700 or 800, you're probably pretty good. Again, depending upon what you're looking to do. I have to go answer my door though. I have someone at the door. So
all right,
if someone else can pick up. All right. Sorry
Lafayette,
about that.
Lafayette, can I read this question in the chat and answer it?
Oh yeah, sure.
So Antoinette Jones says, home ownership is great, but owning a home does not seem to mean the same in many states. Some states permit home ownership, but the same owner does not own the land the home stands on. Is this value in home ownership is in this type of situation comparable to owning in states where homeowners own the land? Or should we not be concerned with this? what states separate home ownership from land ownership? So I'm just going to address that as a realtor, right? So generally, if you buy a home, which is what we're talking about, if you buy a home, you own the land. So what happens is they call it, you have the land, which is what you purchase, and then the improvement. The improvement is considered the house, right? So anything you put on the land is an improvement, right? So if you put a garage on there or whatever it is you put on there, a parking lot, or you pave it and let people park there, that's an improvement. So, but the only time you don't own the land, and I'm kind of talking generalizations here. The only time you don't own the land is if you have a co-op. So if you have a co-op, you actually own just the structure that you have. So you own the walls and the floor, but you don't own the roof. You don't own the land around it. If you have a condo, when you own a condo, you own the land that's underneath it and the roof and the walls. So the condo gives you a little more. So it depends on what type of thing you're buying, what you own. If you buy a house, you automatically own the land. The only time that's an exception is Hawaii that I know of, right? So Hawaii has different laws. We're not going to get into that unless somebody here has home ownership in Hawaii, then we can talk about that. But yeah, so that's how, Antoinette, hopefully that answers your question.
I just want to add something to that, Reggie. It just makes me think about the situations where people have a business and they're renting the property, the building that they're running a business from. And they've been in business for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, established business, they're doing well, but they don't own the property. And then, the lease is up for renewal now, and then the owner says he wants, just an exorbitant amount of rent now, in an increase in the rent that you may not be able to afford. And oftentimes I've seen people in business actually have to move from an established location and sometimes even go out of business, because now to find the space that they're in the current times, it's just unaffordable. So whenever people say that they're going into business, I always suggest that you own, if you have goals and dreams and you're planning to be in business for a while, try to own where you set up shop, because I think, I don't know all of the details about, as a musician, I don't know all the details about Lenox Lounge, but it's a landmark. They shot movies in there, so many great musicians have performed there. And like I said, I don't know all the details, but it had something to do with the ownership of the place. He had been there for years, and I don't know why he didn't try to buy, own it, but he ended up going out of business, and I'm sure that same thing has happened a million times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can piggyback on that, Reggie Woods. I can think of two very famous clubs in New York where ownership came into play, and the club ceased to exist. And the first one was back in the 1990s. It was a club downtown called, where all the piano players used to play, all the really good piano players, Kenny Barron and all them people, Hank Jones, on University Place. Just south of 14th Street. Oh gosh. I'm drawing a blank on it, but it's very famous.
Are you talking about the jazz club over there?
Yeah, that was over there. They closed in the 1990s.
Yeah, I remember which one you're talking about. I can't think of the name of it either.
I know Knickerbockers.
Bradley's.
Okay, so Mr. Bradley did own the building, and he married one of the ladies that worked there. And after Mr. Bradley died, she kept the place running for some years. And then she decided to sell the business. She kept the building, but she sold the business. So boom, no more Bradleys. Whatever happened after that, I don't know. Lenox Lounge was a different situation. Here was a club that had been there since Billie Holiday's days. She died in 1959. Mr. Reed and his wife bought the business, I want to say in the late 80s. And Mrs. Reed was the real owner. She was the businesswoman of the family. Mr. Reed was a policeman. And she had the business going. But that whole time, that place was being rented. That space was being rented from someone who owned the building, and different owners of the building over the years. But Lenox Lounge was a like Reggie says, a landmark. Never got official landmark status, unfortunately, but it was a landmark. If you were in Harlem, meet me at the Lenox Lounge, or it's over there by the Lenox Lounge. When you get past the Lenox Lounge, etc. I would say that Mr. Reed was never a person who, after his wife passed, he continued the business. He wasn't a person that was into real estate. One of us said earlier that Reggie Wood said, oh, you bought your house for $10,000 20, 30, 40 years ago. Somebody offers you $1 million, it's $1 million, it's worth $1 million? I can't believe it, you know? Well, that was the case with Mr. Reed. The owner of the building, who was a brother about our age, offered to sell it to Mr. Reed, who's about our father's age, for $1 million in the year 2008, 9, something like that. To him, that was like an exorbitant amount of money. But to his son, he has a son named, same name, who's about our age, was like, Dad, that's the price. You've got to. But Mr. Reed was not hearing it. He couldn't understand that this building was worth $1 million. So he decided to not purchase it. So a few years went by, and the rent for the lease went up. The lease was finished, and when the owner wanted to do a new lease, he didn't really want Mr. Reed anymore, and so he doubled the price of the rent, and that was the beginning of the end. So understanding the value of owning, I would say that was key to the failure of that business. Or the lack of the understanding of owning. Yeah. So.
You know, Reggie Woods brought up something about ownership as well. When a lot of people might not understand the different type of companies, right? So you have sole proprietorship and LLCs and S Corps, C Corps. So if you have a sole proprietorship, it gives you ownership of your business, not necessarily real estate. This isn't a real estate statement. This is just a business statement. But it doesn't necessarily give you the tax advantages that you might want, but the LLC and the S Corp can. That's a whole nother topic. We're talking real estate here. So that's something just to be mindful of if you set up your company, just what type of company you want to set up. And of course, I'm talking for-profit companies. I'm not even talking about not-for-profit. So yeah. So I'm going to give one of my other ones that I wrote down for the 10 reasons for Generation Z to own a property. One, another one is it's one of the best investments you'll ever make. And I'll just read what I wrote here. It says, most of the things we purchase depreciate: cars, clothes, vacations, different things. So most of the things we do not build wealth. Building a home is a great investment, or buying a home is a great investment. Once you purchase a home, you're now an investor. Stocks and bonds go up and down. Real estate can go up and down, but in general, it's always going to increase in value. So in the long run, real estate appreciates, and you're now an investor. So owning a home is one of the best things you can do, best investments you can make.
You know, recently I've heard people discussing that during these times, I've heard several times people saying it doesn't matter how much money you have now. We're all in the same situation, right? And I seriously, I disagree with that. I think that there's an advantage to having wealth and having some money as a cushion, food, clothing, shelter, whatever it is that you need. This whole idea about the world is ending and it's so chaotic and it doesn't matter. It's ridiculous to me. And whenever I hear that, I think about real estate. I think that something that will hold up during tough times, people got to live somewhere. You know, in America, no matter where, people have to live somewhere. There are certain things that are just essential to life. And as long as the world is functioning as we know it, you know, people have to live somewhere. People need food, people need clothing, necessities. I was baffled when I saw on television where in Ukraine that, you know, people were like taking a suitcase and just walking away. I'm like, well, does that mean that the other parts of the world, people are not as materialistic as they are in America? I mean, how spoiled Americans may be. We got so much stuff. The thought of me putting my stuff in a suitcase and going to Canada or going to Mexico is, I just can't imagine that. But then we see millions of people that have homes. And so, I mean, I don't know, maybe somebody can explain that, but how are they able to do that? I mean, what is it, how are they living that is so different from the way we live that allows them to just walk away from everything with a suitcase?
Yeah, I hear you, Reg. But in or you know, of course, you know, probably a lot of those people are simply renting in an apartment building. But for the ones who actually do have a home, that's one of the casual loss of your home is in general, and I know you know I'm just preaching to the choir, you know, yourself, and by saying this that it's like it's basically one of the casualties of war. When there's a war going on, that's what's really what it's about. It's a land war. It's a like there's, you know, the fact that there's a limit about a land. So those countries over there, they're fighting over the land, the access to the land. And so Russia is saying, we're going to take this land, and whoever's not going to be on our team is going to be out, you know. So that concept of you going from possibly $1 million brownstone to going to zero, that exists in the state of war. And another example would be for Black people in America, the formerly enslaved, we didn't get any land after we were emancipated. I got my brother on here, and so you know we both trace our lineage back to a guy named Tom Harris, who was enslaved on a plantation in Virginia, and after emancipation, he ended up with the plantation for a few years, and then it was swindled out of him. He was swindled out of it. But his son and his grandson were able to acquire land in the same area, and that land we still have in our family today. So we're talking about Tom was back 6 generations from us. That's just one example. Okay, you know, the Tulsa, Oklahoma situation, the couple of places in Florida, and there were possibly maybe 100 towns that were Black towns where Black people found a way to buy land and build their own towns that were predominantly Black towns, but in a state of war, not one country against another, but the people of one country against the people of the same country, were able to push out a group of people. And those group of people, they lost it. They lost their homes, they lost everything, and they had to start over wherever it was they went. And that was mostly to the northern cities and out to the west, to California, to Los Angeles. So that state of warfare is just something that's a constant, you know.
Right. So if there was any doubt about how important it is to own property or own your home, these ideas that we just talked about kind of support that. I mean, just how important it is on a global scale, on a bigger scale. It kind of reveals how important it is to own your own.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because of time, I'm going to read off all 10 things that I wrote about why a Generation Z person under 30 should buy it. Then if Lafayette approves, we could have people ask questions, but that's up to me to have. All right, so 10 reasons why a Generation Z person should buy a home. I'll just list them all. I'm not going to talk specifically about each point. I'll just list it, and then if I need to, I'll talk about the points later. 1, there's a limited amount of land, which I already addressed. Number 2, the home will be yours forever, right? Number 3, it's one of the best investments you'll ever make, which I did expand upon earlier. 4, your investment will appreciate, right? It'll grow in financially. 5, stability, right? You'll be more stable. 6, the benefits of tax savings, which James Brown could really talk a lot about. Number 7, inflation protection, right? 8, you can work from home, right? And that's a big one for Generation Z. 9, it's capital gains. And that I would have to explain that because it's not capital gains in the way most people would think of it. But it's capital gains. 10, wealth building, right? Which Reg would. So those are the 10 points. Laf, should we open up the questions, or gentlemen, what's your thoughts?
Certainly. Yeah. Let's go ahead and get to the questions. Anybody have questions?
Yeah, just unmute and ask. I know there was a few statements in the chat. I think I addressed them.
Good afternoon. Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning, my wife, Denise. My brother, Lafayette. Hey, this is a great topic. Great for you all to do this. I'm driving, so I'll keep it brief. But just a quick question, your thoughts. In you all's introduction, you talked about owning property in different states, which is commendable. And I've owned properties, always been in the same state in Maryland. Just wondering what your thoughts are on just any challenges with having your properties distributed like that. Some people say, you should be local to your properties. Obviously, it's not anything hard and fast on that. Just wonder what your thoughts are on that. Thank you very much. I'll listen.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to say, if if I could afford to purchase all the properties that I own in New York City, I would. I think the market it just got to be too expensive uh, for the long haul. You know, how much time do you have? Um, so one of the reasons I looked in other states is pricing, what's available, opportunities, um, and it's you know, managing property in other states can be difficult. You know, usually the best thing to do is to find uh, someone who is a general contractor that you can build a relationship. That's probably the cheapest way. It may not be the best way, or a management company that can manage your property. They usually charge anywhere between 8 to 10% of the gross. Um, and you know, the thing with that is, you know, it's almost like that old story in the military where they're paying like $500 for a hammer. So you really, you know, when maintenance comes into play, you know, it's hard to keep an eye on that. You know, you get overcharged for things. You know, you need a flap in the toilet, and they're charging you, you know, $100.
$200.
Uh, so, but the idea is that as an investor, you're always trying to seek out opportunities that fit your budget. Um, and I think if you want to grow, build your wealth, the only way to do that is to expand. And you got to go outside of your comfort zone. And the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah. Mm. Yes, definitely. And for my properties that I have out of state, I have one in Virginia and I have one in Pittsburgh. I have a property manager on, and I pay them both. They both get 10%.
Mm.
It works out great. Um, Pittsburgh, when I first started out there, I did not really have a real property manager. Uh, it was a situation where I knew someone, and every time there was something needed, I would have to basically handle it. He would you know, call me and say it's cost such and such, you know, and I just knew, you know, I mean, just one of the things you got to have a feeling for when you're in business is you got to have a feeling for, is my relationship with this person ever going to be fruitful? And then you have to behoove you to make that decision to terminate that person um, once you come to that conclusion. And that was one of the best things I ever did was me coming to that conclusion and terminating that person. And then I went out and I just said, there's got to be an honest manager somewhere in the town of Pittsburgh. And I was just lucked out, and I found one walking distance from two of the houses that I owned.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that changed everything for me. So that was about 2014 when I made that change, and I still have that lady as my manager, and I only have the one house now, but she takes care of it wonderfully, and I make a profit every month, and I've been making a profit on that house ever since then. My situation in Virginia, I found a property manager. I looked in the phone book or online, and I found somebody 2 towns over, and you know, basically took a chance on them, and it's working out well. You know, you're going to get into situations where it's not going to work that well, and you're going to have to really think hard and go with your gut, go with your feelings a lot, and go ahead and make that change. You know, as Michael Jackson said.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just give a real quick answer. For in Ohio, when I did it, I was living in Ohio, and then I moved. And I think the thing about that, I think both of my brothers are saying is, and every real estate investment might be great when you buy it, but over time it might not work out, right? So we all learn from, our things that fail, right? So you learn more from failures than you do success. So mine, I was in Ohio and I managed it myself. I had another one in Ohio that just really didn't work out that well, so I lost that one. The one in New York and Brooklyn, I managed myself, and then the stuff in Jersey, I decided to get closer to where I was living, so I managed myself. So I've had a lot of help, but as Lafayette said, I would just get people to fix things as I went along. So I didn't really have a property manager. I just had like a fix it guy, a carpenter, guy that could fix stuff that would do different things for me. So that's how I did mine. So it was pretty simple. Looking at something in Pennsylvania now, we're trying to figure that out. But usually when I buy something, it's usually because I know somebody in the area that can keep an eye on it, and as well as either rent it themselves from me, or just be my eyes and ears on the property.
Awesome. I actually do have a question. Well, first and foremost, I'd like to thank you guys. It's been like an abundance of knowledge on this call, and I do fall within that Generation Z target audience, and I am currently just trying to explore those options on buying that first property, and taking that first step, as we said, to build that wealth. So I've tried to prepare myself in some of those ways that we've kind of discussed in the beginning of the call, in regards to credit and things of that nature, to kind of really prepare yourself. One thing that one question I have is, should there be a difference in the way we approach, some single family properties versus multifamily, and then even looking at like the New York market, as Mr. Woods had mentioned, for someone like that is in Generation Z, I see a lot of people kind of exploring some of the like southern states, moving down to Florida. Some friends going to Jersey, and it doesn't look like New York is a hot commodity. So just want to know what you guys' perspective is on that.
Repeat your question, Joseph. Are you Haley's friend?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. I didn't know when you started talking. I said, "Oh, this is my man." So repeat your question, please.
Sure. So, well, first, for someone that is currently, Gen Z, should there be can I still approach multifamily investing, the same way we look at single family? I definitely want to utilize, whatever it is, as more of an asset, and like try to build wealth. And I've primarily been thinking multifamilies as like that first step.
All right, I'm going to jump in here before Reg Woods does. So we're a real estate group, and we all have done it different, right? Which is why we're so diverse, because we all learn from each other. So I've only invested in single family residences. Why? It's cheaper and it's easy, right? So and let me just give you a little background as well. My mother was a real estate investor. She was a nurse, but she bought houses, and they were all single family. So yeah. I'm learning from, she's riding me around. I'm a little kid, 8, 9, 10 years old, and she's collecting rent and hiring people to fix stuff. I didn't know I was learning, but I was learning, right? She would just take me with her. She didn't really talk about what she did, but I just watched. So that was what I knew, right? Now we're looking at expanding into other things. So my answer would be to get in the game any way you can, right? Just make sure when you're in the game, you understand the game, right? Don't don't go on the football field with a hockey puck, right?
Right.
You know, if you're going to be in the game, be in the game, in the right game, in the right field, right? So, and make sure that you're not overpaying for the property. So it should be a good price.
Right.
You know, maybe fix it up or something like that. Obviously, New Jersey, not obviously, but New Jersey is cheaper than Manhattan. You know, then if you go over the bridge to the Poconos, that's cheaper than New Jersey. So the farther away, and this is a very general statement, you get away from New York, it's usually cheaper, right? So that's why a lot of us said on here, we have properties in Ohio and Mississippi, it's cheaper. You know, Reg Woods put it real clear. If we could all buy property in Manhattan, we'd all do it, you know?
Yeah.
But it's just expensive. So that's my story. And I know Reg Woods has a different perspective, which I like as well.
Yeah, you know, I have someone who has properties, has a bunch of properties in another state. What he generates from 10 properties, 10 management, 10 different tenants, I get from one property in New York City. You know, and there's only 4 tenants there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Once you leave, you know, the hubs, you know, where real estate is really expensive, you know, people pay less rent. You know, the rent roll is less. So what we've done in those situations is try to purchase a property really cheap. So find a house, you pay $4,000 for it, $5,000 for it, and then you put 20 into it.
Yeah.
And now you've got a property, it's in pretty good shape, and you can rent it out. The idea is over 2 to 3 years, you recoup your investment, and then going forward is cash flow. That's an ideal situation to be in. So if you can duplicate that, you know, say you got 3, 4, 5 properties that you were able to get really cheap, and then you invest into it, you can take one at a time, depending on how much capital you have, because capital is really what holds us back in most situations.
All right.
Yeah. So you want to you model that and do it, duplicate it over and over again if you can. And then, you know, and if you're from the Z generation, if you do that now and you wind up with 10 properties that you've accumulated over a 10-year period, 15 years down the line, 20 years down the line, now you have a serious cash flow. Not only that, you've established a situation where you can borrow and you can do other things. So, I mean, that's, you know, I know you said you have friends who bought stuff from Florida and South Carolina. A lot of people are doing that. There are advantages there. Just got to pay attention to what you're doing and try to get things. I've never purchased anything at market rate. Never.
Me neither.
Never, you know, so
got it. So that's key.
Right.
See, that's a
That
key.
is.
Got it.
But let me add to what Red just said. The only way you can purchase under market rate is you have good credit and you have like a mortgage or something. Like you have to have something that they're willing to say, okay, you know, well, this guy already has the money. You know, you can, like if you have a really low credit score, no money, then you got to pay market rate.
Right. Got it. All right. Yeah, that all makes sense. And this is super, super helpful. So definitely want to come through with I guess that leverage so that, you know, you can get that under the market rate. Wow. Yeah, this is super awesome.
Let me just say one more thing real quick. Now, I'm not saying that you should not try to get property in you know, in New York City. It's just a different process. I think, you know, I get like 1 million phone calls from real estate people every day. These guys are like, they're trying to find properties and make deals and constantly. So that's the kind of investment you can make in New York. You just got to really put your nose to the grind, build relationships with real estate brokers. I think the first house that I purchased through a real estate broker who used to get properties from the bank and just was trying to get rid of them. That doesn't happen as much as it did 20 years ago, but it's your hustle. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, if I may, if sorry, can I ask a follow-up question? Because I think you.
But before you ask a follow-up question, can Lafayette say something, and then we have a one in the chat. So Joseph, let's kind of keep it moving. Then we'll come back to you. Haley has my number. I could always talk to you later. But Lafayette was trying to say something. Then Joseph, hold on to that thought, and go ahead, Lafayette.
Definitely get in the market whatever way you can, and whether it was a single family or a multifamily. Just in general, most people are going to probably end up paying market rate because that's what they know how to do. It takes a savvy investor like you two to get something that's to get a really good deal. Get something way below market rate and all that, and those kinds of things. It's very important to develop those skills as a real estate investor as you go along. But you can do well also by if you get something at market rate, but you're not paying over what it's really worth. So that's one of the things you gotta try to key in on. And there are risks. So you might be the market is just at the high point and you're buying high, and then 2 years later it's much lower. So go ahead.
I want to. There's something in the chat by Antoinette Jones again. It says, "Is this ideal for 30-year-olds with lower salaries right out of college and school loans to repay? I struggle with a similar situation after the death of several family members. I was not aware of Airbnb, which may be game changers for Gen Z." So let me just address that, and then whoever else would like to. So if you have a low salary and you're out of college and you have a loan to repay, the best thing to do is obviously repay your loan, right? Then they have a lot of loan forgiveness programs. I know Robert Smith, who's a billionaire, is doing loan repayment. Some schools do, some states, counties have some loan repayment situations. Sometimes you can go, depending on your career, if you're a teacher, you can go teach in a certain area and they'll forgive your loan if you teach there for 5 years or so. So there's different things you could do as far as loan repayments. If you have a low salary and you want to get a home, then there's Rocket Mortgage has programs. NACA, N-A-C-A, has programs for first-time home buyers. I think, as Reggie Wood said, you really got to just kind of hustle and figure it out. With the internet, you can do a lot of that. So Antoinette, there's ways to do it, but I can't say it's easy, but it's definitely worth it. Like, anything that's going to pay you in the long run is usually a hustle, and we're here to help you, right? That's why we're doing this, right? We've all kind of done it in our own ways, and we've collectively decided to, like, let's give this information away for free, because we didn't have I didn't have anybody telling me how to do this, right? I saw my mom and I watched other folks, but I didn't have anybody telling me this. So this is really to help you all figure this out, so to make it easier for you all. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? There's a few other people. It would be great to hear from you. I see my sister-in-law is on there, Denise, and I see my cousin Pat, and I see someone else named Jasmine. You have any questions?
Jasmine is my daughter.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Lafayette. I don't have any questions. I just had a response to Antoinette's question about not owning the land that the property is housed on? And my response is typically that's more so in commercial real estate where, you know, there are individuals that own valuable land, but they don't really have the money to develop it. And so they'll ground lease it to a developer. And the developer will come in and build on it. They don't want to dispose of the property. They want to hold on to it because it's too valuable to dispose of, and they can make money on the ground lease, collecting money from the developer that comes in and develops on it.
Okay.
Yeah, great
Yeah,
point.
thank you for that.
That's what they do with the stadiums and all of that. They'll buy it and then lease it to a 99-year lease to to a major sport team.
Right.
Yeah, when I was already about to put a house on my mom's land, I considered getting a mortgage, and the mortgage company, they have this thing where they will give you a loan for the house, and in return, they'll attach a lien to the land. And so I was wary of doing that because I felt like it was a way for them to gain power over this land that I felt very uncomfortable about giving up. So that's why I did not use that particular mortgage company. Yeah.
This I'm gonna bring up something, and I don't know if any of my brothers have done this before, but I've heard people that have done this. They'll buy like an abandoned building in the city, right? And then they'll find somebody that wants to have a company, right? Barbershop, restaurant, whatever it is, and then they'll lease it to them. I mean, yeah, they'll rent it to the person. The person will fix it up, right? And then they'll do all the work and put all the money into it and fix it up. And basically you have somebody just fixing up your property and then paying rent. And then in 5-10 years, if you want to keep them, you can. I know a lot of people that have done that and they lost the property because they never owned it. They fix it up, but they never had any ownership in it. I don't know if Lafayette, Reg, if you have any experience. I've known people that rent it and done that, fix it all up. And my thought, my comment to them was always, why'd you fix it up without any, something written that would say, well, if I fix this up, then my rent is going to stay at this for 10 years, or something in writing to say, well, what do I get in return for this? So what's your, Lafayette and Reg, what's your experience with, just buying a shell or something that's in bad shape and then having somebody fix it up and all of that? It's great for the land. That's great for the homeowner.
No,
Did you want to jump in there, Reg?
No, I haven't had that experience. Personally, I've never done that or been involved in a situation like that. I tend to go solo. I try to. I don't want a lot of people involved. A lot of different, commitments and connections and. Early on in building, my situation. So it sounds like a great idea. Would I do it? I don't think so, because I would imagine that eventually there would be some issues, and I would try to avoid them. And I'm sure that ways to work those kinds of things out. But me personally, I would stay away from that kind of stuff.
It seems like it could be a good thing if everybody come to a positive agreement. Say, I'm checking to see if I understand you right, Reggie Pittman. I own a piece of property on a lot. The property needs a lot of work, And instead of me fixing it up and then finding a tenant, I find the tenant first, and the tenant does the fixing up, and puts a lot into it. Then, then I'd be very willing to give him a lease, and make it worth his while and my while as well, because he's doing all this work for me that I didn't want to do for myself, and now I'm going to get rent from him for a certain amount of time. It'd be just fair to give him a lease, and business leases are often long term. They're not just 1 or 2 years like when you renting your home. So 10 years, I think is would be at the minimum if somebody's going to put a whole lot of money into a spot.
Okay, can I say something off yet? This is Denise again.
Please.
Typically, that's more, I know you guys are talking about residential real estate, and I'm more experienced on the business side, on the commercial side, because I've been doing commercial real estate for a long, long time. But typically, if you're in commercial real estate, when a landlord owns property, if someone wants to come in and lease it out for a business purpose, if you don't negotiate into your lease where the landlord will contribute towards the build out of your space, the responsibility of building out that space is yours totally. And you get to indicate in the lease, what you can take. Usually any fixtures that you attach to the property stay to the property, but you have the right to remove anything that's not a fixture when you leave the property. But it's typically the lessee's responsibility to go in and build out and improve the space in a business setting.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess it's good to mention that, commercial loans, they have a whole different set of rules than residential loans. I mean, the responsibility on a commercial loan, I mean, if you fall behind on your payments, man, they can come and take your stuff for real. Whereas with residential, Fannie Mae, government, you have a certain degree of protection. It's not as there's a process for foreclosures and to take someone's property, which is a little more lenient than a commercial loan. So also, I think that I don't know the stats or the numbers, but I think the loans that tend to foreclose the most probably are commercial loans. Because people, who are buying their homes, they're in for the long haul, 30 years. In fact, I think just recently commercial loans started to offer 30-year fixed. Prior to that, I think it might have been 2, 3, 5 arms, all kind of these situations. Don't quote me on that, but I think so. So when I said earlier that that's a situation I probably would avoid, it's a whole different ball game, and it requires a certain skill and knowledge to be successful in that situation. Versus, single family residential, or even multiple family under 4 family.
There's one thing that we haven't talked about much, which is tax benefits, right? So if you own a home, you have tax benefits. So that means you can deduct the interest expense from off your taxes. Right. You can if you have a workroom that's yours, you can deduct that off of part of your taxes because you're the homeowner. If you're renting, it's a different situation. So you can do it if you're renting, but it's a different situation. Then there's the capital gains itself, where if you buy the house and there's you have to pay capital gains because you made a profit of $250,000. So then If you have it through a company, then you can pay 20% instead of 33%. That's a little more. Yeah, that's something that you learn as you go, right? I learned it after I had to pay some capital gains. So I said, I didn't think capital gains would hit me, but it hit me, and I was like, oh man, I heard about this capital gain. So as you go in the game, you learn the game. So that's something that you should be aware of, right? So there's a lot of tax benefits once you're in the game. So we're trying to educate you as before you get in the game, know what's coming down the pike, because it's coming down the pike. Whether you want it to come down or not, it's coming down the pike. So be prepared. So the tax benefits can be great.
Do you want to talk a little bit about depreciation? I was James Brown was on there.
I think James is on it. He's doing taxes right now. So James is.
No, I'm back. Yeah, I mean, depreciation is really just a concept, and this really only comes into play if you're operating the property for business purposes, either using it as to run a business or for rental income. So really, depreciation is a concept that says for fixed assets, meaning anything that has a useful life of more than 1 year, rather than deducting the expense up front, you depreciate it over its useful life. So let's say, if you bought a stapler from Staples, that's something that doesn't have a useful life of more than 1 year. So you deduct that entire cost up front. However, if you invest in a rental property, that obviously has a useful life of more than 1 year. And the useful life of various types of property are assigned by the Internal Revenue Code. So for rental real estate, that useful life is 27 and a half years. So to make it simple, let's say you pay $275,000 for the home, you rent it out. You can't deduct that $275,000 in the year, that you purchased the house. You deduct it ratably over the 27 and a half year period. So that's $10,000 a year. So, and that's sort of, I don't want to say it hidden, but that a lot of times you hear people say that they have positive cash flow, but yet, or for tax purposes, they show a loss, and that's usually because of depreciation, which is a non-cash item, right? Because you already put out the cash when you bought the house, whether you pay in cash or have a mortgage or whatever. So let's say you have a net cash flow of $5,000 for your rental property, but then you get that depreciation deduction of $10,000 a year, right? Which is the $275,000 divided by 27.5, 27 and a half years. So that's $10,000 a year. So that $10,000 will generate a $5,000 tax benefit, right? Because you'll be showing a loss on your tax return, even though, you put $5,000 in the bank for that year. So that's that's an accounting concept, but it's important when you're trying to assess profitability, especially as it relates to investment properties. Like I said, it's not really important for purchasing a home, as your personal residence, but definitely if you're looking at investment properties, that's something that you want to factor in.
Yeah, and I brought it up because I experienced it. My accountant, we talk about it and talk about how much depreciation I'm going to take this year as opposed to last year, and what my expenses were, and did I sell any property, all those kinds of things. And that's because I'm a rental investor. I have rental tenants here in Brooklyn and the other places. So it's important for the rental investor. But for yourself, if you're going to just own your single family home and live there yourself, no, yeah. Mhm.
James, can you talk briefly about tax benefits of owning a home? The one you just mentioned one. We talked briefly about capital gains. I don't know if you heard what we said, and some other things.
Yeah.
So can we just talk briefly about like tax benefits of owning a home, especially for Generation Z.
Right. So the primary tax benefits for home ownership is you get to deduct your mortgage interest, which can be substantial, especially in the early years, and your real estate taxes. So, you know, that helps you in the way the government is sort of subsidizing your purchase, right? Because you say, well, you know, if I'm renting, you know, I'm paying, you know, maybe let's say $2,000 a month, but my mortgage is going to be $2,500 a month. But a substantial part of that mortgage, as I said, especially in the beginning, when the interest or the mortgage loan is going to be the majority of your payment, you're getting to deduct that interest and the real estate taxes. So I also want to throw in a couple of years ago, coming in with the tax law changes of instituted by the previous administration in 2018. They capped the state and local tax deduction, which includes, you know, real estate taxes as well as state and local income taxes. They capped that at $10,000, which is a big detriment, especially to people like us who live in the Northeast, you know, high tax states, you know, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, you know, California in there, even though it's not. So just think, you know, if you live in this area, you know, not in the city, like those multi-million-dollar brownstones like Lafayette and Reggie, but if you live in New Jersey or Westchester or Long Island, it's a good chance that your real estate taxes alone are more than $10,000. So, you know, I have clients who live in Franklin Lakes, their real estate taxes are like $40,000, right? And then when you throw your state and local income taxes on top of that, I'm sorry, not their real estate tax, but their total tax deduction before this change was like $40,000. Now this change come in, it can only deduct $10,000, which to me, I thought would serve as sort of a disincentive, you know, to home ownership, right? Because that's one of the things that you always pitch is like, yeah, well, you know, the government is actually helping you, they're subsidizing the purchase of this house, right? Because you can deduct part of your payments, whereas if you rent, you don't get anything, a canceled check, you don't get any equity, you don't get any tax deductions, nothing. So it looks like that may change again as part of, you know, the new tax act. One of the proposals was to increase that cap from $10,000 to $80,000, which is substantial because most people aren't going to hit that $80,000 threshold. But you know, that's another major benefit of home ownership. You know, besides building equity, you do get some sort of a tax subsidy from the government. And remember, if you rent, your landlord is getting those deductions. So you're just helping to pay his or her mortgage and taxes, and they're getting the deduction. So that's something to think about.
Yeah, and that was great. You know, you explained that so well, and you understand it so well. The
So you're thinking about switching
layman,
accounts?
I'm gonna give up this piano, man. I've been trying to get it. You know.
Don't give up the piano, man. Please don't get no. That's not enough.
To a layman, and to a person who's never owned a home, that's probably head spinning, you know. But don't worry, that's why you're going to hire somebody like James. Mm-hmm. You know, when it comes time to do your taxes, you're going to hire somebody who understands your situation, and your situation as far as needing a good tax accountant is going to be it's going to be more important. If you're just renting, from what I remember when I was renting, it was so much simpler doing the taxes, even as a musician taking deductions. But once you start buying these properties and $500 screwdrivers and all that kind of stuff, you know, you really need somebody who can get in there and help you get the best tax advice. Mm-hmm.
You know, James always says something that I think is really important. He said, and James, you could expand upon this. He said, come to me like either before you buy the house or right when you buy the house, but not when it's time to do the taxes, so I can advise you throughout the year of what you need to do. So by the time it's tax deduction time, then you will already know what you needed to do. So it's not like, well, now you're here, but you missed doing this and you missed doing that. So James, is that accurate? I know you mention that quite often.
Yeah, what you're talking about really is something I call retroactive tax planning, which, you know, doesn't really work. You know, it's hard for me or anyone else to kind of fix something that's already been done. So if you're looking for tax planning, which, you know, is a little different than tax advice, planning is forward looking, right? You can't do it retroactively. So yeah, I always tell my clients, you know, whether it's a decision involving real estate or anything else, you know, if you're thinking about doing something and you know it has possible tax implications, come to me beforehand. Call me. You know, I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to charge you for a 10-minute phone call. And, you know, it could save you, you know, thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars. You know, I get it a lot when it comes to people taking withdrawals from 401k plans, let's say, you know, and that could be for a home purchase or something else. And they do it and they wind up getting hit with a big tax bill at the end of the year or in the next year. And they're like, oh, well, I thought I already paid the taxes. No, you paid a 20% withholding, but this bumped you up into a 30% tax bracket, plus you have to pay 10% penalty. So, you know, that's 40%, you know, 35%, and then you got to pay state taxes on top of that, and you don't have any state taxes without. I was like, so yeah, let's do that in advance. Very important. You know, if you are working with an accountant, you should speak to them before you make any major decisions. And if you're not working with an accountant and you are making major financial decisions of that nature, then you probably should be working with an accountant. And it doesn't have to be me.
How can they get in touch with you?
With me?
Obviously, you know.
Yeah. I'll put my information in the chat, but it's jbrown@jbrowncpa.com. Very, very easy to remember. Even Reggie Pittman remembers that sometimes. But I'll put my information in the chat.
Lafayette, he was doing so well for about the last hour. You know, he just has to throw in a jab every now and then, man.
That's my thing.
Yeah.
You know, and he's my accountant, but you know what? I didn't file yet, so I could always. Nah, I'm not gonna say I could change. I'm gonna use you, James. Do we have any other questions or comments? You know, let me repeat my 10 points of your Generation Z why you should buy a home. There's a limited amount of land, so you might as well own part of it. That's one. Two, the home will be yours forever, right? So that investment will be yours. You can keep it, you can sell it, you could pass it down, but that home will be yours forever. Three, it's one of the best investments you'll ever make, right? It's going to appreciate as time goes on. Four, your investment will appreciate. The 3 and 4 are very similar. 5, stability, right? You always have a place to call your home. You don't have to be moving from rental place to rental place. So stability, financial stability, family stability, all of that. 6, the benefits of tax savings, which we just talked about. 7, inflation protection. We didn't talk about that much. Your rent won't keep going up. Your mortgage and the fixed APR would be the same. So your mortgage will stay the same. 8, you can work from home, right? We didn't talk that much about that. non-capital gain, it's a capital gains, right, which we just talked a bit about, and 10 wealth building. So those are things you can find that. We're going to put all that and more information about those specifically on our website, richusa.net. So if you want to read more about it, it should be up sometime today. So go to that site and check it out, richusa.net. I'll put the address in the chat. Any other questions? Comments?
Yeah, and I was going to say that the information we put in the chat is pretty much a good idea if you want to grab it now before we end. It's a good way to just hold on to the information. I was trying to figure out how to save the chat. Does anybody know?
I've never done that before. I've heard you can, and I've had people.
Know.
How do you do it?
If you go to the chat and you see the to and everyone, go to the right. There are 3 icons. One looks like a page, the other looks like a smiley face. Then you see ... Click the ... ellipsis and you'll see save chat, and you click save chat. Once you leave the meeting, it will save to a Zoom folder on your hard drive, on your desktop.
You know what? Somebody told me that before. You can't do that from an iPad. You have to do that from like a computer or something. Because I'm on an iPad and I don't see it on.
I'm on an iPad too.
Yeah, so we can't do it from an iPad. You have to do that from a computer.
Yes.
So
you save it, Antoinette?
Yes, I'll save it.
Okay,
great. And then you could email it to. I'm assuming you know Lafayette.
Yes.
All right, so you can send it to Lafayette.
Alrighty.
Joseph, you had another question you wanted to ask earlier. We're over time, but we don't want to cut anybody off.
Yeah, totally. So, my question was more in general of, in like back to I think Mr. Reginald Wood's point on that hustle and trying to get in and build those relationships. And getting in contact with those real estate brokers, that's where I guess those deals or those relationships are curated. So my question was, for someone in Generation Z, what's the best way to kind of put yourself in those rooms, in those places to build those relationships and build upon that?
I'll tell you what I did. When I lived in Queens, I just went into every real estate office that I knew, introduced myself, try to talk to the owners, let them know what I was trying to do. And pretty much that's how I built those relationships. I ended up with 3 different guys that would reach out to me whenever they had properties. Of course, I had to have the right credentials and credit and all of that for them to take me serious. Right. And after I did the first one and proved that I could maintain the property and it didn't create any issues. Not that it would create issues for them, but I don't think they would want to do business with someone who they would turn on to deals and then they end up losing it. So after I proved myself, then, the guy would call me constantly, I got this, I got that. And so where do you live?
So I do gotta say, I am also a native Queens kid. So I definitely have, a big love for, where I'm from. But I currently do live in Uptown Manhattan. So I'm, in the city currently.
Right. Well, the Manhattan market is tough. I mean, if you don't have ties in Queens, I would go out there and pick maybe 10 or 15 real estate offices and just go in and introduce yourself and let them know what you're trying to do and talk to them, their brain, and see if something happens. You might go to 15 places and maybe one of them call you, and that could turn into a good situation.
Yeah, totally.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, that's like a great idea, and we'll definitely look to kind of implement that. Want to definitely just jump into those offices and kind of work to create those relationships. That's a great point.
I'm gonna add something to Mr. Wood's statement. Now with being Generation Z, you don't even have to walk the streets. You can just go onto your phone and find people in different areas and not even leave your house. So that's an option for you and all of us now. One thing I did when I wanted to learn more, when I was dealing with capital gains and everything, I was asking all my musician friends and all these educators that I knew that knew nothing about capital gains. So I said I needed a new set of friends. So I joined the 100 Black Men. And then there's a group there that do real estate, right? So I had to deal with some people that had been there and done that, right? So I said, I need a set of friends that know about this capital gain stuff. So I looked around and I had some neighbors in Bergen County that were in the group, 100 Black Men. So I joined them, and then I would ask these brothers some questions about capital gains, real estate, and we're still friends today, right? So, and I'm on the board now because it's a good group of guys, right? And what you want to do is, as Reggie Wood said, and all the guys say, is develop your network, right? Because your network is your net worth, right? And then you have us, like, so you can come to us. Haley knows how to get in touch with me. I'm a realtor as well in Jersey, so I specialize in Bergen County. So Reg Woods grew up in your same area. Yeah. So don't make this a one-time thing. You contact us. We've been doing this,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you guys bring up, amazing points on utilizing that network. And, I must say, as long as I've been with Haley, within that time, I've been exposed to the impact of 100 Black Men. I actually was a part of some of those seminars, a few years back where, some of the relationships I made within 100 Black Men were amazing. And it's amazing that, the older I get, it comes back full circle, being on the seminar, continue to impact. So, definitely want to continue to use, this as a resource for just an abundance of great knowledge. I thank you guys because, this is really true to the times for, me and just my personal situation and time as a Generation Z individual, trying to look to make his way up and in a crazy time, for continuing to stay positive and on that search for education and knowledge that you guys are creating that opportunity to provide. So much appreciated to you guys. And yeah, as you both mentioned, we'll continue to stay close and pay it forward, which is something that my man 100% told me back in the day. So
great. Thank you. Pat Daniels, Jasmine Donovan, do you all have any questions or comments briefly? No? Okay.
No comments. This was really beneficial and helpful.
Thank you.
Pat? Okay. Well, so we've been on for a while, and anybody want to have anything they want to add further?
I'm going to say my 10 points one last time. And then you can find them. You can find them on. Reg, don't laugh, man. It's not funny, man. What you laughing at, man? You can find these points and the information on richusa.net, which is our website. 10 reasons why Generation Z should buy a home. 1, I'm going to go from 10 to what I'm going backwards this time. 10. wealth building, right? So you build wealth. 9, it's capital gains, right? So you have benefits as far as the taxes and all of that. 8, you can work from home. 7, right? And working from home is going to be a benefit as far as tax deductions as well. 7, inflation protection. Your rent, your mortgage usually don't go up, but your rent could. 6, the benefits of tax savings, which we talked about. 5, stability, stability for financial stability, family stability, your children as far as going to the same school. 4, your investment will appreciate. 3, it's one of the best investments you'll ever make. 2, the home will be yours forever. And 1, there's no more land being made. So those, and then you can look at that. So, any other gentlemen?
Yeah, this video will be up shortly. We'll put it up on YouTube so you can go back and check it out again. And like you said, so you will put links and everything in the website. All right.
Reg?
Yeah, you know, just having the response that we had from the brother, I didn't remember what his name was, but you know, that's what we look to do. We want to see more people have that kind of experience, and it makes it all worthwhile, you know. So we'll continue.
I think James is on his phone now. James, you got anything?
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I am on my phone. Yeah. No, I think it's very important, especially for us as African Americans, to encourage the younger generation to invest in owning their own homes. I mean, you know, I've said this on our other meetings, and we touched upon it briefly earlier. Is there's a huge wealth gap between African Americans and almost any other ethnic group in this country. And the primary reason for that is because a lack of transfer of intergenerational wealth. In other words, you know, wealth being passed down from one generation to the next. So if your grandparents owned a home, and then when they passed, that home went to your parents, and then when your parents passed that wealth from that home, you know, whether it was sold or whatever, and your parents' home is passed down to you, whereas my parents and my grandparents all rented, you know, their homes for the course of their life. There's really not much to pass on, right? So you're starting with a huge head start. So it's no surprise that, you know, you're wealthier than I am. I may, you know, from a standpoint of income or whatever, I may be close to you now, or you know, even with you, but you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, of wealth that's been passed along to you, and a large part of that has come from, you know, your ancestors owning where they live. So, and again, I touched on it earlier. You know, my son is 24, and now he's going through the home search process. He's actually put offers in several places, but he's been outbid. You know, the market's so crazy right now. But you know, it really makes me proud as a father that, you know, that's where his mindset is. A lot of people in this generation, you know, they just want to rent. They bounce around from here to there. They want to live in a place that's trendy. And he says, you know, he did his analysis. He said, I figured out, you know, if I paid rent, I would be paying more, just as much as, you know, I would paying the mortgage. And I'm not gaining any equity. And I didn't say anything, but I was like, wow. It's like, if I didn't do anything else as a parent, I guess I did that one thing right.
Good job, Dad.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for being on, and we'll catch up with you again real soon, okay?
Cool. All right, guys, have a
All right,
good one.
everybody.
Man.
Thank you, everybody. See you
Appreciate
later.
it.
Okay.
Okay, now,
Bye-bye.
take care. Bye-bye.